Everyone, and thank you for joining us in this deep dive session. We all know the building sector has a very important role to play in helping Australia achieve its net zero commitments. And NABERS has a very important role to play in helping the building sector achieve this target. In this session, we're going to focus on what NABERS is doing to help accelerate the uptake of renewable energy in the building sector across Australia. My name is Clemente, and I'm the Data Insights Manager for NABERS, and I'm here with Corine Mulet, who is our Technical Projects Manager. So this is our agenda for today, and as I was just mentioning, today we're going to dive into what NABERS is doing to help achieve and drive towards building electrification in Australia. Next, we'll dive into a new tool that we'll be releasing by the end of this year, the Renewable Energy Indicator, that will help us achieve this outcome. Next, we'll be doing a short update on our climate active carbon neutral certification and some small changes that we'll be doing that will help more buildings to be rated with this pathway. If you have any questions along the session, please use the Q&A function that you have at the top right of your screen. We'll have plenty of time at the end of this session to go through these questions. And in the case that we don't get to answer any of them, we will be addressing them after the conference. You can also download this presentation using the resources page, also at the top right of your screen. Okay, so what are we doing at NABERS to help drive electrification in buildings across Australia? Many of you would have seen this report, which came out last year from the International Energy Agency called Net Zero by 2050. I know there's a lot going on in this graph, so please don't try to read everything that's in there. We'll focus on the most important bits in a second. But what this report was doing was basically, it went through the main sectors of the world economy, and you can see across the timeline, it shows what needs to happen at what point in time for each of these sectors for the world to be able to achieve its net zero commitments. Now, if we focus into the most important bits for the building sector, you can see that it's clear that we need steep improvement in terms of energy efficiency and flexibility of the building stock, and a complete shift away from fossil fuels. And we need to have what the report calls zero carbon ready buildings. So a zero carbon ready building uses renewable sources directly or other sources that will be completely decarbonized by 2050. And in Australia at the moment, this means using either on-site or off-site renewable electricity or electricity from the grid, which will be fully decarbonized before 2050. So you can see that we have three major milestones to hit in the next decade, in the next 3 decades. So the first one, by 2030, we need for all new buildings being built to be zero carbon ready buildings. Next, by 2040, we need half of the existing building stock to be retrofitted to zero carbon ready levels. Finally, by 2050, more than 85% of the buildings need to be zero carbon ready. So you can see that we have a very big challenge ahead of us. So what are we doing in NABERS to help overcome this challenge? Well, there are 3 main things that we have been working on that we'll be talking to you today together with Corine. The first one is the update on our NGA factors. This is something that we have started our journey on last year. And what it basically means is that the underlying algorithm for our NABERS Energy rating tool has been updated to reflect the fact that the grid is decarbonizing. And basically what this means for buildings is that the more electricity the building accepts, then the higher the star rating it can get over time. And we will continue to make changes to this underlying algorithm across all of our sectors as the grid continues to decarbonize. In fact, we have our next update already scheduled for 2025. In line with this, we have developed what we call a prediction tool. So this prediction tool helps building owners understand what the impact of these changes will have on their existing assets. So they can basically put in all the building information that they will normally use for a NABERS Energy rating into this tool, and the tool will show them how the rating will change over time. And I have an example on this that I will be showing you on the next slide. Finally, we also have been working on a new tool called the Renewable Energy Indicator, which is a transparent display of the amount of renewable energy that a building uses, and that will be released with every single NABERS Energy rating that is certified. Corine will be taking you in more depth on this tool later today. So first of all, our prediction tools. So we have released this tool last year, and it's available for download in our website. So if you navigate through the rating section of our top website menu, and you go through calculation tools and get into the prediction tool section, you will see that you have several Excel documents that are available for download and use by anyone, and they are available for all our NABERS rated buildings. So these tools, what they basically do is they cover the predictions for our schedule updates for 2025 and 2030, and they cover two different scenarios. What are these scenarios? So we have included two different levels of decarbonization of the grid, based on the fact that no one really knows at what pace the grid will be decarbonizing. But there are a number of predictions being made, so we have included these two scenarios for you to get a sense on what's the magnitude of change that is most likely to happen. So you can see in this graph, you'll have a similar graph in your prediction tool. There's a blue line and an orange line, and what these lines are showing are the impact of the fuel sources of your building on ratings over time. So in this case, we have a building that has a proportion of gas and that is currently sitting at 5.5 NABERS Energy rating. If this building would make no changes whatsoever to its fuel sources, by 2030, this building will see its rating result drop to 5 stars. So a little bit of information on how people are using this tool. We've heard from industry that this tool is helping building owners understand what the performance of their existing assets will be over time. So as you have seen from the previous graph, there will be a cohort of buildings that if they make no changes to their fuel sources, they will see their rating drop over time. Conversely, there will be another group of buildings, those which accept a higher proportion of electricity, which will see the rating increase over time as the grid continues to decarbonize, and we reflect these changes in our underlying algorithm. It is also being used for building design or renovation projects. So when people are undertaking the design of a new building or thinking on renovating an existing building, they're popping all that information into the tool, and it's telling them, well, this is what the impact of your decisions will be over time. And this is helping building owners and designers make the case for building electrification. So we have a couple of quotes from people in industry who have been using the tool for the last year. The first quote reads, "The NABERS prediction tool was instrumental in estimating the NABERS rating the building would get if Mirvac didn't phase out natural gas as a fuel." We have another quote which says, "The NABERS prediction tools have proven invaluable in equipping our clients with the knowledge required to future-proof their buildings by planning electrification works accordingly." So as you can see, this tool is out there, it's being used by industry, and it's helping people understand what the impacts of these changes will be over time. If you have any question or you need assistance in understanding how this tool works, or need a couple of more examples to see how it works, please do not hesitate to pick up the phone and get in touch with us. We are very keen to help you understand on how to use the tool and understand what are the changes that are coming. I will now hand over to Corine, who will be taking you through the Renewable Energy Indicator.
Thank you, Clemente. Okay, so yes, I will be telling you a little bit more about the Renewable Energy Indicator today. It is a new tool that NABERS will be launching at the end of this year. The reason why we're launching this tool is that we will encourage more buildings to run on renewable energy. We know that buildings have an important role to play in reducing emissions if we are to meet efficient and running on renewable energy. So let's get into the first slide. So first of all, what is the Renewable Energy Indicator? It's an indicator that tells us the proportion of energy that came from renewable sources during the rating period. In short, it tells us how much renewable energy a building is running on. It's a metric that is clear and transparent, that will be based off a methodology and specific rules that NABERS Assessors will be following. And every single renewable energy indicator result will be audited, just like all of our other NABERS rating tools. That means that Investors, customers, tenants will be able to look at this metric and they'll be able to assess whether the building meets the sustainability credentials that they're after. And essentially, ultimately, this indicator is seeking to get rid of fossil fuels in buildings. So what are we considering as renewable energy as part of this indicator? So firstly, there's the renewable energy target. Every single building in Australia contributes to the renewable energy target by paying for environmental charges in the electricity bills. That means that every building in Australia can claim a portion of the renewable energy target, and that currently just sits a little bit under 20%. So all buildings will get 20%, just under 20% renewable electricity from the renewable energy target. Obviously, we'll also be considering on-site renewable energy as a source of renewables, as well as renewable energy that was generated off-site but that was purchased by the building. So that might be if the building has entered into a PPA or is directly surrendering renewable energy certificates themselves. So let's have a look at who will be getting this renewable energy indicator. So it will be included in every single NABERS energy rating, and that is for all building sectors that NABERS currently rates and any new sectors that NABERS will be rating in the near future. It will be included as part of the NABERS energy rating at no additional fee. So what you can see here on the right-hand side is the new certificate that NABERS will be launching once we launch this new indicator. Now, I know it might appear a little bit small on your screen, but you don't need to look at the detail. I just want to show you what it is going to look like. This is a draft version. We're hoping it will look something as close to this as possible. So what you can see is that we are displaying the NABERS energy rating, and also we are displaying the Renewable Energy Indicator result. It's really important that you understand that there will be no change to how we calculate the NABERS energy rating, and this is actually a question that we get quite frequently. Will there be a change in how NABERS treats on-site renewables for the NABERS energy rating? And the answer to that is no. There will be no change to NABERS energy ratings, including how we treat on-site renewables. So currently, if you have on-site renewables, you get a benefit from that. You will get a better star rating in your NABERS energy rating. Once we launch the Renewable Energy Indicator, that will continue to be the case. Now, we also need to talk a little bit about NABERS Energy with GreenPower. As you know, we provide a NABERS Energy with GreenPower result. You can buy GreenPower, and that will improve your NABERS Energy rating. And currently, if you buy GreenPower, that is the result that appears on your NABERS Energy certificate. Now, moving forwards, once we launch the Renewable Energy Indicator, we will only be displaying the NABERS Energy without GreenPower result, not the NABERS Energy with GreenPower result on the certificate. The reason for that is that we have gone through a lot of consultation, and we have received extensive feedback over the past 2 years telling us that the NABERS Energy with GreenPower rating was confusing to users. It was confusing mainly because it is a combination of both your energy efficiency and your renewable energy purchases, but it doesn't tell someone how energy efficient the building is and how much renewables they're running on. So we've been asked, and this is from extensive feedback that we had, to separate the two out, to provide the NABERS energy rating without GreenPower and to provide a renewable energy indicator. So we know that some buildings do use GreenPower to get an uplift in their rating to meet their requirements from their tenants in their leases. And because of that, we will be providing a 2-year transition period for this. That means that once we launch the Renewable Energy Indicator, for a 2-year period, we will continue to provide the NABERS Energy with GreenPower rating in the rating report. No longer in the certificate, but it will be in the rating report. And after that 2-year period, we will discontinue the NABERS Energy with GreenPower result. So it will no longer be calculated and will no longer appear in the report. So let's have a look now at renewable energy purchasing. So like we've been talking about GreenPower, and so yes, NABERS currently recognises GreenPower as a form of renewable energy purchase. In fact, GreenPower has recently released a new product called GreenPower Corporate Direct, where large electricity users can purchase renewable energy certificates from the wholesale market or directly from a generator, and then they can still surrender those under the GreenPower program and benefit from that two-tiered level of verification and audit. We have received also over the past 2 years quite a bit of feedback that only accepting GreenPower, accredited GreenPower, was limiting, and that NABERS should look into accepting other sources of other forms of renewable energy purchasing, in particular renewable energy certificates. So when we launch the Renewable Energy Indicator, we will be accepting accredited GreenPower and voluntarily surrendered renewable energy certificates that are non-accredited GreenPower. So those renewable energy certificates are called large-scale generation certificates, which are known as LGCs. Now those LGCs can be obtained by a building owner in a number of ways. The building could be have entered into a power purchase agreement with a generator or with a retailer, in which case the generator or retailer may be voluntarily surrendering those renewable energy certificates on behalf of the building owner. So we will be accepting those. The other option is that the building may simply be purchasing electricity from a retailer, and then as part of that package there may be, the retailer may be voluntarily surrendering those LGCs. We will also accept those. And also a common option is that the building owner is surrendering those LGCs directly with the Clean Energy Regulator on the registry. So obviously we will also be accepting those types of surrenders. So we've talked a lot about electricity, renewable electricity, but let's not forget that this is a renewable energy indicator that looks at the entirety of the energy that is consumed in the building. So that means that we also look at the gas and the diesel consumption. And this is also something that people sometimes forget. So this building, for example, is running on 100% renewable electricity, but it is only getting to 64% on the renewable energy indicator because it is consuming gas and diesel. And that means that if this building wants to improve in the renewable energy indicator, it will need to reduce its consumption of fossil fuels, of the gas and the diesel. Okay, now there may be quite a few assessors watching this session and wondering, well, actually this means that I'm going to have to be collecting some new information and some new data that I haven't collected in the past for NABERS energy ratings. And yes, that's right. And we actually did a pilot. So during April and May, we ran a pilot with a handful of buildings, and we gave them the opportunity to be the first to obtain a renewable energy indicator result. And that means that we had the opportunity to test out in real life the rules, the methodology, the calculator that we use, and to get assessors to test it out. So we already have the rules developed for this renewable energy indicator. They're in draft form because these are the ones that we used for the pilot, and we will be updating them in the next few weeks based on the findings from what we learnt from the pilot. But the first thing that assessors will need to do is become familiar with the renewable energy requirements that are in the rules. So these are actually already available on our website, the draft form. So if you Google NABERS Renewable Energy Indicator, you will actually land on the web page that has a lot of information about the indicator, and at the bottom of the page you'll find the rules. So as an assessor, when you go on site, once we've launched the indicator, you will need to collect any on-site renewable energy data if there's an on-site solar system, for example. Now, the pilot was really interesting because it made us realise, and it really got assessors to look into, how do you actually obtain this on-site solar information? And that could be through the inverter. So you may be able to directly download the information from the inverter, or there may be a meter that's connected downstream from the inverter, or there may be a portal that is connected to the inverter, in which case you can get the data from there. or the building owner may have subscribed to a data analytics platform where you will also be able to get the data from. So there's many different options. And the rules will clearly explain what those options are and what the requirements are if you are using those options. The other thing you'll need to do is to collect evidence on any renewable energy that's been procured. Another interesting finding of the pilot here was the variety of levels of information that you can find in electricity bills at the moment. There are many different retailers. The retailers are formatting their invoices in different ways. And that is going to be something that assessors will need to get a little bit used to at the start, because we are seeing that there's many different formats. And we will work with assessors if they are, have any issues in understanding bills, and also speak to retailers if necessary. So if you would like to find out more, there is currently information available, and there will be more information available moving forwards. So we have the renewable energy ruling, like I said, that you can find on our website already now. We'll be making some edits to that, but it is already in its draft form, and it will give you a really good gist of what you will need to do. There will be a Renewable Energy Indicator training module that we will be launching in a few weeks' time, and that will be for new assessors, but it will also be available to existing assessors, and we will be running a webinar for all of our existing assessors where we will do a deep dive into the rules, into the requirements, and we'll allow plenty of time for assessors to ask us as many questions as they like, the technical nitty-gritty questions.
So, Corine, I'm a bit intrigued. So it seems like you have run this pilot, so more people are becoming aware of what's coming with this indicator and becoming part of the implementation process of it. So I'm curious, what are the most common questions that are getting around the Renewable Energy Indicator? Yeah,
that's a good question. And I think I've already touched on those briefly. So the first one is that gas and diesel do play a part in this. So sometimes there is an understanding that this is just about electricity consumption, and it isn't. It really is looking at the entirety of the consumption in the building. And the second one is that there will be no change to the NABERS Energy rating. And this is actually also a question that's coming from building owners, because they're wondering if the on-site solar system will be treated in a different way. And really the answer to that is there is absolutely no change to the calculations made and the data that will be used for the NABERS Energy rating, including how we treat the on-site solar systems. Okay, thank you, Clemente. I will now pass on to you for an update on carbon neutral certification.
That's right. Thanks, Corine. This is the last bit of our presentation today, and I would like to take you through a short update on some changes that we are doing to our climate active carbon neutral certification. So first, let me give you an update on the uptake that we've been having on our carbon neutral certification. NABERS has been providing a pathway for carbon neutral certification under the climate active framework since 2018. As you might know, there's also a Green Star pathway which is administered by the Green Building Council of Australia. So all the numbers that you see here on screen apply exclusively to NABERS pathway. So last financial year, we had 35 carbon neutral certifications which were done. This financial year, which we are about to close by the end of this month, we already have 50 carbon neutral certifications. So this shows an increase in uptake, which is fantastic. Also, out of those 50 carbon neutral certifications, 45 were for office buildings, while 4 were for shopping centers. And we had our first hotel to be certified under NABERS pathway for carbon neutral, which was the Pro-Invest Holiday Inn Express in Newcastle. So NABERS currently offers this certification for these 3 building types, so office building under base building and whole building rating scopes, shopping centers, and hotels. This year we will be running a project that will be looking into expanding the carbon neutral certification into new sectors. We'll be first looking into those sectors in which NABERS already operates, which are apartment buildings, data centers, hospitals, residential aged care and retirement living, and office tenancies. But we will also be looking into expanding onto those sectors where NABERS will be operating in the future. Now, this project will be looking into whether it's actually feasible to provide carbon neutral certification for any of these building types by looking into whether the data that's required for this certification is actually available and accurate according to climate active principles. So if it is deemed possible to provide a carbon neutral certification for any of these building types, we'll be providing a set of rules for these specific building types, as well as any further guidance needed for assessors to go out and offer this certification to any of these buildings which might want it. And now, for the last slide of my presentation, I'm just going to take you through a small change that we are doing to our carbon neutral certification. So, as many of you might already know, at the moment, for a building to be able to qualify for carbon neutral certification under NABERS pathway, they need to achieve a minimum of 4 stars NABERS Energy rating. And the reason behind this requirement is that climate active requires for buildings to be run efficiently as a first resort, and then to use carbon offsets as the last resort. So having this minimum requirement in place provided a mechanism for us to be able to guarantee that this is being complied with. Now, so this requirement will still be in place for offices and shopping centers, so they will still need a 4 stars NABERS Energy rating to be able to qualify for our pathway. But for hotels and any other new sector that we will be moving into, we'll be changing this, adjusting this requirement to be in line with what the average star rating for these sectors is at the moment, which is 3 stars.
Clemente, would you like to tell us maybe a little bit more about why we're making this change, why we're taking the requirement down to 3 stars for those other sectors?
Yes, definitely. So we have received a lot of feedback from stakeholders, which said that having a standard requirement across all of our sectors was a bit unfair, and that it was leaving a large portion of buildings out of this of being able to be certified under this pathway because the bar was set too high for them. So we have done this in consultation with industry, and the result was that we actually needed to adjust the requirement for each specific sector and adjust it in line to what the average star rating is for each of these sectors. So for offices and shopping centers, where the NABERS tool has been developed a while longer ago, and these sectors had more time to evolve, and the actual average NABERS rating for this sector has increased from 3 stars from when the tool was originally developed to 4 stars where it is sitting now. But for hotels and other sectors, the tool has been developed more recently, and so the average star rating still remains at 3 stars. So you could have a hotel which is actually operating efficiently compared to the average of its peers in this sector, but was still unable to qualify for the carbon neutral certification.
Okay.
And just a final note that we will be releasing a ruling on this soon, probably the next couple of weeks, and you will be able to read more about these changes in that ruling. And also, this ruling will include some alternative pathways which might apply for your building, and in the case that your building does not meet this minimum NABERS Energy requirement. So yes, just stay tuned. That ruling is coming.
Yep. Okay, thank you. So that was an information-packed session, but hopefully it has given you some insight as to the changes that we are making, the new Renewable Energy Indicator. Hopefully we've had some questions come through. We've got time for questions now.
That's right. So we do have a couple of questions coming in. So the first one says, would NABERS consider updating the NGA factors annually? So the periodicity in which we have established that the NGA factors should be updated was consulted and was put in place together with industry, and it was established that the 5-year frequency was the most adequate in terms of updates of the NGA factor. Corine, is there anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, definitely. There is, so if we update the NGA factors every year, it means that the benchmarks change every year. And that means that buildings find it hard to track their performance over time because there's an external factor impacting their performance. So that's why initially we didn't change. I guess that's the reason behind why NABERS stayed with the same NGA factors for a long time. But after a few years ago, that's where we recognised that those NGA factors were outdated and were not driving the right outcomes, which is why we entered a long session of consultation, and the decision was to update those. But the decision was to update those on a 5-year frequency to ensure that buildings can still track their performance over time during that 5-year period and their improvements over time during the 5-year period.
Thanks, Corine. Okay, we have another question here which says, if GreenPower will no longer be mentioned on the report or certificate, how will it be recorded in the context of a rating? So just to clarify that NABERS will continue to support the use of GreenPower in ratings. In fact, being the national accreditation, the National GreenPower Accreditation Program, given that it holds the highest standard for renewable energy in Australia, thanks to its 2-tier auditing system, we will still be recognizing the use of GreenPower in the report and in the certificate by displaying the GreenPower logo whenever GreenPower is being used in the rating. Also in the report, we will be showing the amount of GreenPower that's being used compared to other sources of renewable energy.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, next question. Will the Renewable Energy Indicator and climate active methodologies align?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've actually been working quite hard with Climate Active to make sure that these two methodologies do align. So the idea is that if you're doing a NABERS Energy rating and then going on to certify your building for carbon neutral, you want to be using the same values, the same evidence, and you want those two methodologies to match. And that's why we've been working hard to ensure that they do match. So yes, they will align, they will be identical, and that means that the assessor will not need to do any additional work in terms of the energy part of it, because all of the information that will be used for the NABERS Energy rating and the Renewable Energy Indicator will be able to be fed directly into the carbon neutral part of the rating.
Thanks, Corine. So a bit in line with this, also talking about the Renewable Energy Indicator, we have a question which says, just to clarify, is on-site generation, such as solar, going to be excluded from the raw star rating under the renewable energy format? I.e., will it be treated like GreenPower and be excluded from the rating, but not shown in the renewable energy chart? Or is it just accounted for as it is now? Thanks.
Okay, I think I understood the question. Hopefully I did. So in the NABERS Energy rating, any renewable energy that's generated on site doesn't count towards the total energy consumption. That means that you get the benefit of that renewable energy and you'll get a better rating. But that on-site renewable energy, obviously when you're consuming it as a building, then you also get the benefit of that in the Renewable Energy Indicator. So you will get an improved Renewable Energy Indicator thanks to the fact that you're consuming on-site renewable energy. Do you think that answered the question?
I think that pretty much
okay.
addresses it. Yep, so we have more questions coming in. We have one which says, will the Renewable Energy Indicator results feature in the Sustainable Portfolio Index? And this is a very good question. This is a bit of a work in progress. It will be featured in the SPI. We are still working the details on how we will be featuring it, but it will certainly not be included in the next edition of the SPI, given that because of the reporting period for the SPI, many of the buildings which will be part of the next edition of the SPI won't have the Renewable Energy Indicator as part of their rating, given that it will only be launched by the end of this year. So yeah, just a bit of a work in progress, but we will have more news on this later on. Okay, another question. Will the NABERS Energy with GreenPower result allow you to use LGCs? I think you've touched on this a bit, Corine.
Yeah, so the answer to that question is no, because so after a long period of extensive consultation, the feedback was that we should be phasing out the NABERS Energy with GreenPower result, which is why we will not be making any changes to it. So that means that voluntarily surrendered LGCs that are not GreenPower accredited will not contribute to that NABERS Energy with GreenPower result. And just to be clear, that NABERS Energy with GreenPower result will only be available for 2 years once we launch the Renewable Energy Indicator. After that time, it will no longer be available.
Thanks, Corine. We have another question on the Renewable Energy Indicator, which says the REI will require more time to obtain as part of any rating. This will mean an increase in the assessor fee. From the pilot study, is there a feel of for how much additional time is involved?
That is a good question. And that is also one of the reasons why we ran the pilot, because we wanted to make sure that the time spent on this is as short as possible. But yes, obviously, we're aware that this means collecting additional information. And we also recognise that that additional time will be most notable for the first year or the first 6 months that assessors are doing this, because they will need to get to grips with getting solar data, on-site solar data, and getting that evidence. But we did get feedback from the assessors who did the Renewable Energy Indicator that actually it did not require much more time than what they usually do in the NABERS rating. The times where it did require a little more looking into is in the cases where we had assessors who had never really looked at solar systems or weren't familiar with solar systems and therefore weren't too sure where to get the data from. But moving forwards, with the clarity that we'll be providing in the rules and the fact and the training and the fact that assessors are going to be doing this a number of times, it will become faster and faster. And by the second year, when you're looking at those buildings for a second time, I think it will be much speedier for assessors to go through that data and obtain it.
Thanks, Corine. We do have another question which was mentioned in the presentation, but probably worth clarifying again, which says, would the state purchased and retired LGCs included in the Renewable Energy Indicator? For instance, the ICT has purchased offsets covering all the asset operations. Will the office building get this benefit in NABERS?
Yeah, and that's actually a good question because I missed it out. So, like I said, any building will get the benefit of the renewable energy target, but also any other state or territory targets. And you're right, that's the case for the ACT. The ACT voluntarily surrenders LGCs for the entirety of the state's electricity consumption. And that means that any building in the ACT gets the benefit from that, which means that in the Renewable Energy Indicator, a building based in ACT will get 100% renewable electricity.
Thanks, Corine, for clarifying that. We have another question which says, aside from changing the NGA factors, how else are the NABERS algorithm altered? Well, we don't have any schedule update for the NGA, for the NABERS algorithm to be modified in any other way other than for the NGA factors update. We do have a continuous quality assurance where we do monitor our algorithms to make sure that they are working correctly. So if there's any issue that needs to be fixed, then we will be addressing that, but we don't have any other schedule update or modifications other than the NGA factors updates. Of course, once the grid is fully decarbonized, we will need to have another look at our algorithm because we will probably need a different metric for our NABERS ratings, which could possibly be like a kilowatt hour metric instead of emission factors.
Yes, that's right. So before we changed the NGA factors last year, that consultation that we did brought back the fact that we should be updating them to the latest NGA factors, but there were other options that we offered and provided as part of that consultation. And yes, like Clemente said, moving forward, so NABERS calculates ratings using converting the fuels into emissions. And moving forward, the grid is going to decarbonise at a certain rate. And we don't know what that rate is yet, but what we do know is that when the grid is significantly decarbonised in any state, then we will need to have a solution in terms of how we calculate the NABERS ratings, which is what we will be looking into in the next year or so.
Thanks, Corine. We have another REI question. Is the REI mandatory for all ratings? Can a customer choose not to pursue that part of a rating?
It will be mandatory for all ratings. So it will appear in every single rating.
Okay, I think we've gone through most of these questions or all of them. I'm sorry if I have missed any other question, but yeah, there were quite a few. I think we addressed them all. In case we have missed any, we will be following up after the conference, like I said. Also, feel free to reach us through our NABERS mailbox. You can just clarify that you have a question related to this session, and myself or Corine will be getting back to you, just clarifying whatever we might have missed in this session. But thanks again, for all of you, for joining us. I hope you have learned a lot on the changes that are coming. And also, yeah, please feel free to join the other sessions which are coming after a short break. And thanks again.
Thank you.